It's gone. And I'll come and shut it off. When you guys are done, if we remember, we'll just stop.
You're definitely not signing up for the dinner tonight, no? You're doing the karaoke instead.
Karaoke federations, karaoke federations.
I just don't. You're right. There is no competition.
Live bands. Why can't we do this? Okay, why don't you mix both of them? Live confederation karaoke.
Live karaoke is happening.
We need Duncan. Because we need Duncan to federate into Carapace. We need to come back to
You do that?
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining today. This is the NGO Reference Model session. I'm sure you're all in the right place. It's a good crowd here. We have quite a few speakers today, so I'm going to introduce them fairly quickly. We've got Mike Smith from WaterAid, Greg Snow with Save the Children International, Benjamin Kramer from SOS Children's Villages, Thomas Christensen from the Danish Refugee Council, Max Luternes from the Norwegian Refugee Council, and Michael Duggan from ProCare. So thank you all for joining. Thanks to all of the speakers.
From where?
4 years have been here. Thank you,
Cool. So this session is following on from Greg and Michael's excellent introduction in plenary yesterday morning. What we're hoping to do today is take a little bit of a closer look at the model, just to kind of get a bit more understanding of what it is. Following that, we'll see how the organisations that have been involved in it so far are using the model. So it's a practical thing that we're actually doing stuff with. The key part of this topic is really the open discussion at the end. We want to get your thoughts and suggestions. In particular, if you can keep these questions in mind while we go through the slides, we're going to be asking questions. So, does this model make sense? A fundamental question. Do you see any issues with the model? How might you use this in your organisation? How might you want to get involved? And also, given that we're at the NetHope Summit, how might NetHope be able to play an active role in this? So your ideas are very, very welcome. And please do interrupt at any point. So, I thought I'd just approach this from a slightly different angle to yesterday, just to kind of drive a little bit more like why are we bothering with an NGO reference model. Often, I get the challenge, bring some kind of change, be it digital transformation or an IT system or respect for IT and appreciation, which is a key one, or how do we work across federations. You're always doing kind of typically the same kind of things, right? You're always trying to understand what your stakeholder needs are. Once you think you've developed your ideas of what you think they want, you then need to situate that within the wider organizational context. You then need to succinctly communicate this across the organisation. If you don't do it, your initiative's bound to fail, right? Where you're involving externals, you also need to procure and develop solutions. And all the way through this, you need to make sure you're always hitting that common understanding for everyone involved. Otherwise, your project's going to fail. You're going to get all sorts of scope creep. You're going to get road blockages. You're going to get cancellations, right? This is where a common understanding is needed to be able to progress. And that's kind of the purpose of what we're trying to do with this model. It's basically trying to create a common understanding through a common language. And in order for that to be successful, well, it has to kind of have these characteristics, right? It's got to be simple, easy to understand, but at the same time, it's got to be comprehensive, so cover all of the kind of business context. It's got to be extendable, so that where there are areas that you have particular interest, you can go ahead and build from a common framework. And crucially, as we found out today and in previous days at the summit, it's got to be applicable across organizations. If we don't collaborate more, we are going to fail. We'll become irrelevant to the aims of what we're trying to achieve. This last one, about the functional process view. Now, this is talking about what you actually need to get done. We've learned the hard way that unless you're actually grounding your kind of view, your understanding of what you need to get done, you can often get derailed by, for example, in the must not be column. If you're shackled to the organizational department thinking, i.e. my department does this, therefore we've got to continue doing this, or something like that, you quickly get into political thinking. So, for example, many a times, if you're trying to define your problem, thinking about the organizational structure, you'll often get into a case where a department might just decide, no, I'm not going to continue discussions because my department feels under threat, or my staff feel under threat. That kind of discussion. What we're trying to do with this common language is, skirt around that so that it doesn't become a roadblock. Finally, it's only going to succeed if it's not just IT, right? We've moved beyond that now. So that's hopefully a bit of a motivation for why a reference model, common language, common understanding would really help. A quick reminder from Greg's session yesterday. It all starts with the organizational mission. So taking the context, as Greg said, whether it's saving whales, children, water, sanitation, hygiene, all the things that we do. It's all about taking the context, working with your mission to create impact. And what the organization does in our model is the primary activities to turn that context into impact. So it's going from program design, fundraising, funding management, program delivery. Sitting behind that and supporting it or enabling it are the enabling activities. And these support your primary activities in a kind of cross-cutting way, that they support all of the activities, but they don't directly create impact themselves. Although very crucial, as I'm sure all of us will be aware. So I wanted to just highlight, anyone can create this reference model. And I'm sure many of you have already got a value chain, and we've already seen it across many organizations already. However, where this is different is it's combining the views across 10 NGOs into a common framework, and across, crucially, the business stakeholders, not just IT, cutting across senior management, programs, fundraisers, and of course including enabling functions such as IT, communications, etc. I thought I'd just highlight a couple of areas that we've really focused on to ensure and to kind of act as guiding lights for how we might design this somewhat simple reference model, but actually quite detailed when you look at it. So we wanted to crucially look at what the driving focus is. What's the difference between really spelling out the difference between our primary activities, things that make impact, and our enabling activities, things that support the making of impact. We wanted it to be simple on one hand, but also accurate on the other hand, and allow you to extend it so that you can contextualize it to your organization. Another really important driving factor was that we needed each item to be intrinsically different to each other item. Like each of the 54 items are only there because they're different to other ones. So we've already gone through the pain of saying, is this different to another item? Is this, is it similar? Is it equally weighted according to the NGO context? And it only exists if there's something behind it that's tangible, there's processes behind it. It's not just there because we thought it would be a good idea to put it there. And also to encourage that common understanding and common language, it's built on all the industry standards that you'd expect to see there, such as TOGAF, APQC, PMD Pro, all the things that if someone coming into the organisation saw, they'd be able to understand what it is, or at least see parts of the model. So that's as far as we got yesterday. We looked briefly at the top level, and we mentioned that there's these other things that sit underneath there. And I thought we don't have time to go through everything in the model, but I thought I'd just go a next level down to kind of hopefully encourage that understanding. Of course, you need to come and have a look at the model and really work with it before you really get to the bottom. But what you can see is from program design, i.e. taking the context, and really getting to grips with what kind of programmatic work you want to do, what's feasible. Then fundraising it to say, okay, we've got the context, we know what we want to do, how do we fund it? To then manage those fundraising streams so that they're actually as effective as we can possibly make it. To then, and crucially for organisations, delivering the work that creates impact. So to look at them a little bit in detail, and again, not going to spend too much time on it. Within program design, you have items such as context assessment, so understanding your environment, program planning, really engaging with your stakeholders and trying to get that very top level sketch out of what it is you're trying to complete, the time frames, the resources, kind of things like that, but without going into the detail. Then we have things like fundraising. What's in fundraising? Well, the way that the model sees it is there's kind of three top line items. Fundraising, research and analysis, income strategy, income acquisition, retention. And what those are about is, well, research and analysis is about identifying funding opportunities. Strategy is about forecasting based on scenarios and how do you make those forecasts happen. And then income acquisition and retention is kind of taking that entire spectrum of fundraising streams, be it selling goods and services through to individual donations, institutional donations, and all the things that are wrapped up around them. If we go on to funding management, this is about how do we make the funds, I suppose, sweat? How do we make sure that they're effective? How do we match up restricted and unrestricted funds with what our programmatic needs are? And about compliance management. How do we monitor and report on what we're doing so that we're effective both for ourselves and for our donors? And then finally, and this is the really key area, program delivery. Now these are lifted pretty much straight from the project management and development framework, so PMD Pro. And it's things like setup, implementation, control, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, end of program transition. So setting up your governance structures, implementing and managing issues and resources, controlling the variances, monitoring the data, evaluation of how the project's going, accountability to your stakeholders, and what you do at the end of the project or how you move to another project. To go even faster through the enabling activities, what sits underneath them are a whole load of items that we've worked through trying to understand, be it change management, communication, brand management, all sorts of things under organizational management and governance. And the knowledge management, all the items that you need in order to manage your knowledge. Supply chain management, likewise, plan, source, make, deliver, return. Finance, human resource management, and of course information technology. Again, whistle stop, you have to look at the model. Under each item there's a description, and it can link into further levels below. Okay, so that was a little bit of a deeper dive into the model. Just to kind of highlight that it's not just a theoretical thing. We've already started using this. So Greg highlighted the benchmarking that we've done. You can see only 10% of our work were fully supporting applications, which is absolutely crazy. A vast majority is only partially. This can really help steer both what we're trying to do as organisations, but also understanding what other organisations are doing and our suppliers, etc. Some of the organisations within the working group have done specific things as well. So, for example, BSO have taken, their problem statement from their organisational strategy and their impact and kind of mapped it to the model. In WaterAid, we've done the same thing. We take the poorest and most marginalised context, and we want to achieve safe water, sanitation, and hygiene for everyone everywhere by 2030. And so you can really see how it maps to your organisation, and others can do that as well. NGOs, did you want to say a few things how you're using the model?
Yeah, sure. I can also speak to myself, as I've been now with SOS since 7 months, and I've been new to the whole NGO sector. And the same for me, but as Greg also told yesterday, that I totally there was no idea what exactly an NGO is doing or how it is structured. And so it helped me a lot getting on board, and it's still helping us a lot doing every onboarding of new stuff. We have days in which we introduce, for example, also the work of the international office to people in the region, and we can explain really on a good and on profound way what we're doing. Nevertheless, how it's structured in the back end. And the second thing is, we are actually thinking about some kind of operating model, and to really not get stuck into the political thinking. It helps a lot to have some kind of reference you can stick to and think about how to really operate, taking it and thinking about how to operate it, bringing it into really a good way, how to go forward and derive strategies. Of course, you can take it as a reference to really think about which kind of applications you have. Is there a chance to reuse them as well? And across all processes you have in the federation, in case of SOS, for example. So that's, we are already using it for this. So it's not, again, not academical or theoretical question. We are already using it exactly for this kind of issues.
Great, thanks. We also have
Programmatic. So I've been using this as a tool with my senior management team and my board. So one of the challenges I think in our sector is our organizations don't actually understand what they're asking of IT. So we've been developing an organizational scorecard and sub-scorecards throughout our organization. I might actually start with my own one, which is the IT one, which is a balanced scorecard. And we're using the NGO Reference Model to drive one of these, which is our technology capability, because there's a significant gap, and we've just signed off a very large investment on the back of this. And when I first introduced the NGO Reference Model to my CEO, he said, there's an awful lot of activities in there. We're not doing all of that. We're not Save the Children, or we're not CRS. We're a mid-sized NGO, and hard thing to explain when you're in a smaller NGO to the management team is that actually technology tends to have digital has a high fixed cost, but a low marginal cost given the size of the organization. So he said, this is too much. I said to him, well, what would you take out? Go in there and pull something out that you think we don't do. So we dove in and said, commerce. What's that doing there? We don't do commerce. So we have a retail chain. We have stores, and we have point-of-sale systems. We have a web store, that we run every Christmas. That's commerce. So it started a very, very good conversation that was stuttering before then, because it's getting his head around the fact that this is the ask that you're making. So to the point now that this is our organizational scorecard, starting at the top with our gospel values and diving down into the actual 3 main streams of work that we're going to do to deliver our mission. But here we have the NGO Reference Model represented right at the top of our organizational strategy, and it's a critical tool that we're going to use over the next 5 years in our 2020 vision to measure our performance in actually, from the benchmark, measure our performance. And the beautiful thing about it is I can also measure it against my peers.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And then also DRC.
What you see here behind is an output from our IT strategy we have for the next 5 years, which we have made this summer. And this is sort of based on a Gartner model. So we have in the bottom, we have the initiatives which are going to help us run the business. In the bottom row, then we have those who are going to grow the business in the middle. And then on the top, those initiatives who are going to transform the business. And then in this case, the color coding says something about what is the expected life cycle of the system in each of these initiatives. And this has all been sort of based on business initiatives, requirements in the organization. But what I found out when we started talking about this reference model was that it's sort of, this is where it was very useful, but they also missed another perspective on it, which is sort of the entire organizational processes and how the organization is working. So while this is a lot of initiatives, it doesn't say how much does it actually cover out of all the processes we're doing. So in the strategy update we're going to do here in the next year, one of the things we're going to do here is, okay, this is a useful reference model taking this Gartner perspective on it, but it doesn't cover the other aspect, which is the organizational processes as a whole. So these two will be two different perspectives on the same part, and that probably will increase the understanding of what is being done, what is not covered as much, but might not even be covered because it's okay to have no IT systems there. So this is one of the things. The other thing is that I think this benchmarking exercise we have been through and where Mike showed how the situation in general. Okay, because when he did the benchmark, people were saying, oh, this doesn't look too good. It was even worse than the average. But it's okay to go out and say, okay, this is not maybe as it should be, but it's actually not that different from what the sector such as used to. So maybe if there's no IT support in a given area, maybe there's no need for it. That's okay, it's acceptable. Or we can do some common work with other NGOs who are in the same situation where there is actually a need. So this is pretty much linked up to our continuous work also with the IT strategy in general for the whole organization.
Great. And us.
So I've been with NRC now for off and on for 12 years. Been working in different parts of the organization. Very focused on what we're doing. The bird's eye view that I've seen through working with this model, I've never had. I think it helps you to understand how your organization works, and I think it helps others understand that and to lift their gaze from silo development. So what we're going to use this for firstly, and we're already seeing traction based on our pie chart that was mostly red on what systems we were supporting. We changed the color coding so it was a bit more alerting to our issues. It really helps to have that bird's eye view. So establishing that need for digital transformation, bring that up to the executive level, you see it's working. So also in terms of governing our enterprise-wide systems, so we have Aggresso, for example. We only use it for finance. HR needs something, logistics needs something, but they're all going around like this, looking for the separate solutions. The bird's eye view and the limited resources we have, I think it will enable us to govern enterprise-wide systems better and to bring the right people to the table to have those priority discussions. So your payroll won't work if you don't use Aggresso HR data, for example. If those two functions don't see that, you're not going to get there. It says engaging the private sector, so widely, practically first, engage. We are going to need help on our digital transformation, strategic strategy work. So we believe that this would be a good coming together piece for that. But also widely, bit of the value chain to have that common language with suppliers. It's going to be great, I think.
Great. So there's just a brief introduction or a brief reminder, a little bit of a deeper look at the reference model. number of organisations using it. But as I said, the key part of this session here is about the discussion. You know, does it make sense for startups? What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about issues? Right? There's surely you must be thinking, oh, you know, parts of this model make a lot of sense, but some of it just isn't applicable. Like, there's no way that's going to have anything to do with saving lives. Yeah.
So we talked briefly about this in Oslo, so I know the answer to it. But I'll bring it up because I'm sure other people are thinking it. We have a very strong campaigning and influencing function. But when you look at that and you see program delivery, it may not immediately be seen as covered by that model.
But yeah, that's a great point. Great.
Yeah, so
This is where it shoots me down, by the way. So
one of the challenges we had in developing the model was trying to cover all type of programmatic activity. So whether you're doing advocacy, humanitarian response, or long-term development. So in this sort of program delivery, those processes are meant to be encompassing to the point where you can cover all those different types of content. So that's where we cover that off. And certainly with Inside Save the Children, we have all three of those things. We have advocacy, we have humanitarian response and development. And those processes should be applicable to them.
So what you'll see is with the reference model is when each organisation contextualises it, you might need to have your own definition of things. But the definitions that we use is oh, sorry.
The other thing to mention is that we've only gone to level 1 and level 2 here. With other sort of process frameworks, they go down to level 5, and certainly with Inside SOS, you've taken it to the next level and gone down a couple of extras. So, for certain contexts, when you take the top 2 levels, you may decide that, okay, we need to break it down a little bit further, get to a lower level of granularity for certain purposes. But certainly at a higher level, we tried to make it applicable across the sector.
So I have a question. I was wondering, across so many organizations, who led it, how many people were involved? You said 75 overall, but just kind of the composition of where it sits, that would be really helpful to understand.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Greg talked about a little bit of the history, and he had the timeline yesterday. It started off with Greg back in 2014.
Yeah.
Kind of realising the light bulb moment was that.
It was a European chapter meeting in London. So we had a day dedicated to enterprise architecture as a concept. A few of us were starting to think about that. Taking a different view of IT. How do we actually think more about the kind of value add work that we can be doing across all business units rather than just being looked at.
Yeah. No, I think the concept-wise, it's great, but I'm just trying to understand how you operationalize it in different and what that model looks like, because everybody's stretched so thin. What I run into a lot is, who carves out the time to work on initiatives like this?
Right, that's what the collaboration piece is about. None of us could do this on our own, and if you look at other sectors, I come from the utilities background, financial services, we've done this.
Yeah.
And the benefit to them then is that when they want a software solution, they just go out to a marketplace because they've explained what they want and they just pull whatever it is. And that's why we have so much software failure in our sector and why we have not articulated to our vendors what it is that we need. This is
The point I was going to make though is we had a few false starts. Okay, so although we had quite a few people at the chapter meeting, everyone went, yeah, this is something we should do. It kind of puttered along for a while, and then eventually we just took a smaller group, quite a lot of spare time to be honest, like late nights and whatnot, to try and pull this together. But then once we had something that we thought could be applicable to other organisations, then then we sort of spread it in the NetHope conference.
So behind all this, we did 2 workshops.
Face-to-face workshops.
Yeah. For 2 days each. First with the kind of original 3 organisations, so SAVE, Waterway, and SOS. And then when we expanded it out, we had a second workshop to kind of go through and kind of ratify and say, which bits are relevant, how do we want to tweak it. In that, we actually picked up about 100 issues some of them are just minor wording changes, but you then have to work through them. So we had like those intense 2-day sessions mixed in with some kind of Skype meetings.
Yeah, we're lucky to get people from all parts of the organisation as well. So finance, program delivery, fundraising, to sort of come into these face-to-face workshops at times and give their input.
But people could see the value, right? They could be like, whoa, okay, I'm going to understand the organisation. It's kind of an eye-opener.
So obviously it'd be great to be able to dive into the details, right? And so I can see where you're going conceptually in the discussion around, the high-level processes and how do we figure out how those bake down as we get down to those level 3, 4, and 5. And I have lots of ahas in terms of, each of the individual presentations about how it changed the conversation in their organization. And I think, at least for CARE, I'm having those same different conversations with the same problems that you're saying that this can help address. So I mean, that's, wonderful. And then I think you were just talking about it, Michael. We're in a CRM process right now, and it's just such a PITA that we have to go from vendor reference to vendor reference, right? Where, oh yes, this is our other not-for-profit vendor, and this is how they're using Salesforce. And it doesn't have anything to do with how we're talking about using Salesforce, but it's a not-for-profit, so you must be doing those same things. But we just don't even have a language to say, well, okay, these are the big key processes, and
Here's a question I have. I'm going to pick on somebody in the audience who may have a CRM background. Brian. So I was going to be a mistake to turn up to this one. What do you think as a software vendor who's a rich history in CRM and Box now? Does this make your life easier in understanding what we do?
Yes. What I was going to say is this notion of coalition, this to me, even though the Europeans leave it to you guys and gals to be way out front, but and the Americans need to catch up on this apparently, but I in NetHope community, but when you look at now 6 or 7 or 8 and eventually more of us on the vendor side forming coalition, we're looking for productive ways to articulate what will be a multi-vendor, cross-vendor, more interoperable system environment, cloud environment in many cases, also a transition thereof. So yeah, it's vitally important because the sophistication of how our stuff fits together and what our roadmaps are going to do, and us picking teams on, oh wait, so you're doing that, so the humanitarian sector won't need that, or or where parts of that are custom are going to need to be in an Azure or an Amazon or in other infrastructure environments. Like, it's just good for us to see that so we can map out, not at a legal level, but at a functional level, what we need to support you once more too. Exponential lift in complexity when you go across vendors, as everybody in here knows.
Any more questions?
I think what we could also do is have the vendors not only respond to the model in where they feel they map to it and boldly and publicly put that out in the world, but also maybe articulate where they see other vendors creating even more efficiency in the areas where their systems would touch other systems, whether or not they're going to do this or not, or legally are okay to. Box will do this for sure. But my sense is then if you break down their major areas of functionality on the y-axis against the x-axis of these department level or enabling or primary level, so you can even map even functionally. It's like, okay, their core product does this against these departments, but it's with the API turned on and these other custom things that you can then tackle these other things. The hope is the vendor community can help extract the mystery, and in turn they have to extract some of the margin or profit, but that's what I always champion. It's like, let's get the mystery out of the equation, put all this out there so that you folks don't have to deploy once, have it break, come back, deploy again, have it break, etc. And that's my advocacy pitch for my peers on the vendor side.
I mean,
just to snack onto that, actually, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. We've had a lot of conversations on our side of the table about trying to inform this in as agnostic a way from a product perspective as we possibly can. So as much as you guys can articulate what your specific functional needs are in those various departmental categories, then you can figure out what products will map to that or what product categories will map to those different functional areas. And then we can bring the right folks to the table to help meet your needs. Because right now, yes, I mean, it's only the teenagers in the room, but at some point we want to invite a lot more folks in and be able to participate and fill the gaps.
Yeah, and on that filling in the gaps, wouldn't it be awesome from an NGO perspective is if we all fill in the benchmark and then a vendor comes along and says, oh, I've noticed that across the board there's a deficiency in what you're doing. I filled it for you. Here's the solution. And it just plugs into what we're doing. Like, that would be an absolute awesome.
We're very good at that.
Well, there we go. Business your way.
Yeah, and we want to get closer to true cost, to use Eric Arnold and Dugan's phrase, so that we're not, quote, haggling. And it seems that what I've noticed is often the philanthropic parts of especially the much larger vendors, the philanthropic agenda is often disparate from the business agenda per se. So the business side is haggling and making everybody's life almost impossible. The philanthropy team wants to donate all of it, but you need the brain power and the support and the consultative support from the business side, so it's best the closer those two are. I think as more of this gets laid out and becomes black and white, the business embedded side that's here to do those consultative things to help you get ahead of a strategy is even better, and we can get there faster. And I think more of a lot of the recent vendors that I run around with, like Jorge, like we sit very much in the business as much as we can, as opposed to a foundation that's separate or connected or whatever it might be. And that's, I hope that helps us evolve the hands-on, because we have a more predictive understanding of what our cost would be to be involved on the product side and do the donating that we need to faster, so that if that does have to get made up a little bit on some of the other areas where we have to distribute some of the other things we have to charge for, to be more consultative and not product, that's my goal, because then you use it better.
But then also projecting like the total cost of it, right? I mean, that's something we talk a lot about as well. It's not just software, it's not just training, it's also infrastructure and support and all that kind of good stuff. So having an open and honest conversation with you all about what that is, so we can really get down to brass tacks about what the real costs are on both sides of the equation. I think that'll help get us to a much better, well-informed place, hopefully. And then you can have honest conversations on your ends.
Many awesome pieces. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think not just on a product perspective though, but this could also help like with the problem that we talked about yesterday with the impact cloud, in terms of, okay, well, who can help us implement it? So sometimes your product might meet several part of those processes, and you're looking at that, but I need somebody who has experience addressing this product and implementation or design perspective as well.
And sometimes we're asking, or we're hoping that you'll be open to a best-of-breed product approach, especially as interoperability elevates among our technology suites. It isn't necessarily just that one vendor can fix it all type mentality that's present in the marketplace as companies get a bit more nimble, and the cloud allow us to iterate our roadmaps faster. And so we, I think, also to Greg's point, need to be able to plug in the system integrators, again, that may be a niche in certain areas, but then they understand and they're aware of the other vendors that would complement this varied strategy. And then maybe it's 4 players that actually have to be helpful versus one that has to then come out and relearn on all of our technologies. So again, even on the services side, there's a best-of-breed delivery. They understand context faster, the haggling goes away faster, you get more value faster at lower cost.
An interesting point there, we're being asked to work in consortia. They're trying to deliver, as part of the consortia, to deliver a solution to us, and this is delivering that common language that we all need to speak.
There's one thing that it doesn't do though. If you're trying to work out where your sort of digitized edge services are, so it might be, I don't know, SMS delivery of health information, or a mobile app for delivering education. It doesn't deal with that type of service line specific processing. What we're dealing with here specifically is the operational backbone for NGOs. Okay, so that's the key thing to be focused on.
One thing also that I think could be added, what these gentlemen have said is great, and it's a great template for everyone to take and use. But to capture what the outcome of what the result of using it is, and then try to create best practices for those that come behind that project. It may be good to create that as you implement the process of how to kind of capture it. So you can have the case studies of best practices that come out of it.
So I think that leads us nicely.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Which is the last question there around what NetHope's role should be here, because we've only got so much capacity in day jobs, okay? And we think that we're onto something here, and it sounds like from the feedback we've had so far that there's some good use cases for this. but we'd really like this to be taken forward with some more dedicated resource, or at least partially dedicated resource. And that's where we can see NetHope playing a part. Just wondering from everyone here, who thinks that that's a reasonable request that NetHope will see value in their membership. Can we get like a show of hands or something, like so I can get a feel for it? Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Is there anyone from NetHope in the house?
We've got a board member here, so.
I think we all have just a comment on that. I would not see NetHope's role to further develop the model. I think NetHope would not have the knowledge to do that, nor should necessarily hire somebody to do that, because that could be expensive. But I do think it should be hosting and publishing this model. It should be using this model to rate whatever goes into the solution center and hosting benchmarks.
There is effort though involved. There's
Yeah.
a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
coordination efforts. So someone needs to document these things as well. So yeah, I mean,
It's a challenge we're trying to work through from the board's perspective. Traditionally we've gone for, the typical program for NetHope would be 500K plus. This is a bit different. I will say that one of the reasons it's succeeded to this point is we started small in a chapter rather than trying to, eat the elephant and bring everybody in immediately. That was 2 years of collaboration with stops and starts. So we are trying to figure out how my view is what the chapters start NetHope's role is to scale. How does it scale that across the full membership and also with our partners in the technology suppliers and the broader network. So it's a great question, Joel. There's no easy answer on it because like any organization, NetHope has restricted funds and unrestricted is very small, but we're working on it.
So what might help push things along, I suppose, we'll have a piece of paper at the back and you can put down organisation that's interested and would like further support.
And to be clear, if there is a technology donor who wishes to finance somebody to work on this for NetHope, I think that would be fantastic.
Well, I do think it's easier for us to pitch our peers in many cases our more mature peers that do have their philanthropic efforts and the money they can spend on this be more, they have more cash to pull from, to have a third party that's relatively unbiased as opposed to creating a center of shared, like centers of excellence across, especially housed in each of the 50 members. It is easier, I think, to fundraise and have that, I hate to use the phrase secretariat, it's so UN oriented, but there is an administrative function that a person or two or three could serve. And I'll just indicate also that I know that there's all the other assets in companies that can be tapped into. We heard Mary from Microsoft speak to their highly structured hackathon swing that they did in this most recent past, right? More needs assessment up front, lots of employees involved, lots of good outcomes, lots of repurposable code. So it's like, can this framework inform that body that I think would be easier to fund, that channels more than just discounts and case studies and marketing sheets into this work, but also understands all the other assets that could be acquired that are offered by these companies, be they pro bono support or architects that could help with the next gen of that, and if they're meant to serve as that conduit to more resources necessarily than just discounts and product. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think, Jeannie Ross, MIT Scissor, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing that they do. They help industries go through that documentation and present it as case studies and things like that. So I think NetHope helping to broker those conversations doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money. That's one thing. I think at some point in time we're going to need to, as this matures, right, we're going to need to have some level of facilitation around governance for it, right? And so that's another role that we as members might expect NetHope to take.
It's a great point, the data protection thing we did there with the Innovation Value Institute that started an internal project in Intel, and then they realized, hey, this got wider application, and perhaps it should sit in an academic setting because it is research. So there are a couple of different routes to. We just need to, we're having lots of conversation at the summit on exactly this topic.
Is this model going to be public soon? Like just even on the NetHope Solution Center?
Solution Center.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because there's 7.5 million nonprofits. They're all very, not everybody's a large, complex, international humanitarian organization, but we can't be isolationists about, we have to be sharing of this as much as we can. That's my view as a vendor. It's like, I do need to serve 7 or 8 million nonprofits. There are 50 that I love and hold very dear. There are 7.5 million that follow me and ask me for box. So it's like, okay, help me, and then I have to go to some other have to go to the other sub-segments of the broader social impact sphere and do more of these than just international humanitarian. But please be sharing. It's like if people do hackathons and write code, we want that to be accessible and scalable through GitHub and other places. So the same would apply, I think, to the IP here. So let's not be.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to.
Okay.
Good. Can I just say one last thing? So I'll explain my relationship to this. I saw this piece of work and I just gate crashed it and took it and used it. I've had an entirely extractive relationship with this. This is a result of 2 years of incredibly hard work by a team of people. Not all of them here today, but I would like those that were part of this to, if you could stand up and just a round of applause. This is a significant contribution to the NetHope community, and I think if you want to.
Great. We're going to get that piece of paper.
The Solution Center will also provide you with a way to contact and get into.
Cool.
Is it called the reference model on the NetHope Solution Center?
It's not there yet. It'll
Not there
be
yet?
probably
Okay.
about 2 weeks before Frederick gets it up and running.
Okay.
We're just going to get a piece of paper up and we'll put it up here if anyone wants to.
Should we do it here? Okay.
Just we'll form some sort of contact list.
And please everyone just remember to fill out your evaluation sketch. Making sure that all of those people can make it clear.
Slightly larger. Do we stop this at the end? Oh yeah.